Good morning and welcome to United Way for Southeastern Michigan's virtual town hall on closing the digital divide. My name is Dr. Dershawn Brown and I will be your moderator for today's town hall. Today we will hear from United Way's President and CEO, Dr. Darian Hudson, and then Joshua Edmonds will provide information on Connect 313. The last 10 minutes of today's town hall are reserved for questions, so please leave your questions in the chat box if you're on Zoom and in the comment section if you're on Facebook. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Darian Hudson, our President and CEO of United Way.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another virtual town hall. As you know, we've been trying to do these every week to make sure that we keep you informed and bring the resources that you need right to your computer. We are so pleased that we're able to have Joshua Edmonds with us today. He is truly an advocate and a champion for internet access, which is something that we all need, particularly during this time. I don't think any of us realize just how important having access was until this pandemic hit. And so today he is going to bring some pertinent information to all of us about Connect 313, learning about all of the resources that are available to us currently in the city of Detroit, and also the vision that we have for our city being the most connected city in the country and around the world. And so before I turn it over to him, I did want to just share a little bit about Joshua and just his wonderful background, his expertise, and how we are in such good hands to have this champion to help us close the digital divide in our community. Joshua earned his master's degree in public policy from Howard University, and he's currently the Digital Inclusion Policy Fellow within the Poverty Solutions Initiative at the University of Michigan's Ford School of Public Policy, Go Blue. Prior to his current role, Joshua served as a Digital Innovation Fellow at the Cleveland Foundation, leveraging philanthropic and corporate funding to address Cleveland's digital divide. He also worked on President Barack Obama's Connect Home initiative and received national recognition for his Housing Hackathon initiative. In his current role, Joshua has testified in front of Congress on digital equity, hosted Detroit's first Digital Inclusion Summit, and helped raise $23 million to connect every public school student with broadband devices. Joshua is responsible for developing a sustainable digital inclusion strategy to bridge Detroit's digital divide. And I can't think of a stronger champion, a greater advocate, and someone with more expertise than Joshua Edmonds. And we're just so thankful to have him in our community. So without further ado, Joshua, I will turn it over to you. Welcome to our town hall, and we look forward to your comments.
Sheesh. What a glowing recommendation. Thank you for that. And Dr. Brown, my goodness, if I could get a Siri on my phone that sounded like you, like that is a great speaking voice. So I'll say, Joshua Edmonds, I'm the Director of Digital Inclusion at the City of Detroit. And Dr. Hudson hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of intentionality with that framing. So it's like, how do we create a sustainable digital inclusion strategy? Key emphasis on sustainability. When I began this journey of digital inclusion, it was just a lot of learning, spanning back to the work I was doing in Cleveland. It's like, how do we bridge this digital divide? In order to actually do it, you have to understand like where it comes from. And realistically, many people would say, oh, well, it's just people don't have internet access. And it's like, well, that's part of it. But in reality, it's part of a larger system where obviously anyone who is living in poverty or proximate to poverty, well, these are the things that we need to be addressing. And so then it's like, well, what's that cycle of poverty and where does the digital divide fit into that? And obviously COVID was one heck of an illuminating tool that made us, it made the digital divide in a way that we can never unsee it. But when I began saying, okay, sustainable, that means that as the cycle of poverty continues to persist, that we are going to have a mechanism that will always be able to address it. So it's one thing to say, let's connect every single household in Detroit for 1 year. Okay, we do that, and then 5 years down the line, we're back where we started. And so it's like, how do we focus on building the necessary community infrastructure so that we can drive this work forward? And so when we look at the mission of Connect 313, it is to put in place the means for all Detroiters by 2024 this is being recorded, so I know I'm putting that date out there, that by 2024, that we are putting in place the necessary infrastructure for all Detroiters to be able to take advantage of well-being opportunities, learning opportunities, employment opportunities, all related to the digital divide. And so that's an emphasis on getting people the devices that they need, form factored, because many people have cell phones, some people have tablets, some people have laptops, again, form factored, the internet that they need, form factored once again, because some people have that home internet, some people only have the internet through their cell phone, some people have the internet only through their nearest place where they're getting Wi-Fi. In addition, making sure that they have that digital literacy and digital skills acumen that they need, again, for some people who are only doing it from, hey, K through 12 are learning, or people who just honestly want to learn how to use Netflix. I mean, we are looking at the total ecosystem and the total individual and saying, let's put together that necessary infrastructure whereby we are not just focusing on getting people just internet, we're giving them, and we're focusing on like that total individual to say, all right, all the needs and all the ways that you're coming to this, how do we serve you broadly? So how do we activate people? How do I look at my philanthropic entities? And it's a huge, huge thanks to United Way for actually helping us create the Connect 313 Digital Equity Fund, so that as net new resources are becoming available, we don't have to worry about going 6 months to a year figuring out, well, who's going to be the fiduciary, who's going to be this or that. We already have that. Boom, let's go. Let's build this operation. As philanthropic entities, national and local, want to begin parking dollars and stewarding that, we already have that activated so we can keep going. The goal is to operationalize this as quick as possible, while at the same time being very, very mindful of, well, we can't just move quick for the sake of moving quick, but we need to move quick because this is a pandemic. And I'm not saying COVID, I'm saying poverty. And so that as our response to this has to be very, very quick, because we can't lose another generation to whatever. And so for us, our role is putting in place that necessary infrastructure. We were able to successfully land Human IT. You're probably going to hear much more about them later on. Human IT is a national social enterprise, and they have a very ambitious goal over a 5-year period of hiring 75 Detroiters to run their operation. And their operation is collecting technology from corporate partners, from communities, and refurbishing that technology and redistributing that technology into the community for people who need it the most. Now, this is a social enterprise. This is not just a nonprofit, and that they're not dependent on grants. That was one of the things I said, if we were going to operationalize our work, we need to make sure that this stuff at the very core is sustainable. Otherwise, you're going to find 10 years from now, you're going to find another Joshua Edmonds who's going to be like, and I'm going to bridge this digital divide. It's like, no, we're going to bridge this digital divide once and for all. The goal is to be the national model. The goal is to be sustainable. The goal is to look at community governance, empower as many people as possible, so that way anyone who is touching this structure or is touched by this structure, that they are empowered to do more. Whether that is someone who wants to do more learning online, cool, we got you. Whether that's someone who wants to say, hey, I would like to, release a really compelling report on this. Cool, we've got you. That's something where we want to activate as many people as possible, because this is an all hands on deck problem. This is something that, as you look at how ubiquitous the functions of the internet are and where it goes, it's almost like it's nonstop in every single direction. So like I have my people from banking talking about online banking. Hey, we can't have 20 to 30% of Detroiters without internet access. That's market share that is walking. In the same way that I can't have people who are just not comfortable learning online. Obviously, you see the workforce implications there. In the same way that as we look at the future of healthcare delivery, I can't have 20 to 30% of Detroiters saying, hey, off the bat, whatever gets developed, we can't use. Those are the things that as we begin looking at the future of Detroit and the future of cities like Detroit across the country, there needs to be an entity, a coordinating body comprised of the public sector, the private sector, and community groups and residents, all working together on one accord and saying, this is the direction that we want to go in. And so there's necessary infrastructure that we are establishing by way of, again, I'm mentioning Human IT, I'm mentioning the Digital Equity Fund, but I'm also mentioning the governance that we're breaking down, where we're saying, hey, we get committees to lead this work. We want people who are reporting to a board structure, a community advisory council. We are setting up governance so that way people's opinions and voices are being heard, so that way we're driving this work forward and we are merging the grassroots with the grass tops. So this is a combination of community organizing, little bit of tech. So for the people who are like, oh, well, I don't do technology. I've told people for a long time, the digital divide is not a technical problem. This is a societal one. No different than none of us have to be electricians to see the value of electricity in our homes. And so this is something where it is meant to be an all hands on deck approach. We are looking for ways that we can continue to drive this as an ecosystem. We are not selling for anything less than the best. And so if anyone wants to kind of come and bring this work in Detroit and do these things in coordination and conjunction with us, this is going to scale. We know it's going to scale. And in order for it to scale the way it needs to, we need to become correct. And so I'm thankful to be heard here. I'm also thankful for the opportunity that United Way is just giving for this work to be seen much more broadly. I just want to, I guess, end this by saying, well, in my remarks, not end this, but in my remarks by saying that, there's merit in us saying we're focusing on this issue prior to the pandemic, because that's us saying that, look, we're not doing this in response to that. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And as communities are struggling and they're going with, well, let's just get a group of nonprofits and libraries in the same rooms. Like, no, let's get everybody. and I mean that, everybody, to drive this forward, because that's what it needs and that's what it deserves. And truthfully, that's how Detroit becomes a national model for digital inclusion. And I'm very confident that that we're doing just that. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to any questions, and I can provide any additional insight. I try to keep it as high level as possible.
Okay, thank you so much, Joshua, for that great information. I'm really excited. I mean, I loved everything that you shared. I'm excited for our city. And I'm really excited at the fact that you mentioned sustainability, because as you know, some things come in 1 year and 5 years later, we're trying to figure it out again. So I really appreciate you, speaking to the fact that you're working on the sustainability piece. So we will now begin our question and answer session. If you have not yet done so, please leave your questions in the chat box if you're on Zoom, or on the comment section on Facebook. So our first question is, what makes Connect 313 different from other digital inclusion proposals around the country?
So oftentimes, and this actually goes back to my work when I was at the Cleveland Foundation. For a precursor, the Cleveland Foundation is the world's first community foundation. And so oftentimes we would have many foundations coming to us and asking us for any feedback on what was going on. So that then allowed me to then kind of tap in to see, okay, what are other people doing? And I would say that typically what you're going to see for most digital inclusion programs and initiatives, one, we're hamstrung by funding, and everyone knows it, which is why I actually testified in front of Congress, because we're making the case to get the funding from the federal government to support this work. That still has not happened yet. And so as a result, a lot of people are molded by this scarcity. So many of these people who are doing this work are only doing it in the confines in a very small way, because they don't believe, or they don't know, or they've never been able to get the level of resource allocation we've been able to get. Detroit is a special community. Detroit has a lot of these community leaders, and a lot of people who have the power of the purse that can support things like this. And so you have a lot of other organizations that are just vying for government funding, which, yeah, we could use that too, but we did 23 million of private. And so this is something where we're able to kind of separate ourselves from the field a bit more and say, hey, we already have the investment from our leaders here. And while we don't want to exhaust their generosity, we've already been proven to be good stewards of our resources here. And so we're kind of in a rare air category, so to speak. But I would say even in our functions and our approach, we're not looking to be just a group of people who care about this cause. This is legitimate governance functions and structures and processes with bylaws and charters to say, no, we are official, and there's a certain level of decorum for which we're operating because it deserves that. And I don't think many people have been able to get to that side of digital inclusion yet. I think a lot more of them are just on the grassroots, community-driven side, where I'm like, well, what do you mean by community? When I say community, I'm talking about everybody who lives, works, earns, plays in Detroit. And so that's kind of our broader sense, whereas a lot of other people are just a lot more nonprofit driven, which you need those people, but you need those people in line with all the other actors as well.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for that. Can you restate the name for that social enterprise that you mentioned?
Yes, so human IT, so like human information technology, but human IT. And again, that's a social enterprise. They've been operating for about 8 years now. They're the actually ones who are providing tech support to the 51,000 students who just received those devices In addition, they, for those locally, the local landscape better, their operation is actually based in Detroit, where they signed their lease to be operating out of that warehouse at Focus Hope. So, I mean, it's just a really great initiative that is going to scale substantially over the next couple of years.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, you mentioned the Community Advisory Committee. What is that, and how can I get involved?
Ooh, yeah, you guys are asking the right questions today. So the Community Advisory Committee, I should have I can share some slides, I guess, after the fact to actually break down the hierarchical structure. But think of Connect 313 as a structure whereby you have the Community Advisory Council that sits at equal level to the board. And so the Community Advisory Council is actually over all of the committees. So all the work that's getting done on the ground, everyone reports up to the Community Advisory Council. The Community Advisory Council is our way of saying, hey, Detroit residents, Detroit stakeholders, as proposals get developed, we need your feedback. The Community Advisory Council, they are the ones who essentially hold the values of Connect 313. So if there's a proposal that gets proposed and we are out of line, we're out of line with the values of our community, the Community Advisory Council is one saying, no, that is not in line with that, especially given that in this community, we do this. And that is the value of the Community Advisory Council. So to get involved, I actually just need to send the link to the survey. Luckily, on August 27th, we are going to be having another one of these community conversations from 2 o'clock to 3:30 p.m. And I can send that information as well for anyone that's interested. Again, all hands on deck.
Awesome. That would be great. Please do share that information. We have another question. What is the best way for other organizations in Detroit who are also working on connectivity, especially as it relates to access to health and social services, to improve health outcomes, be involved in this work?
Music's to my ears. It's the same thing. I'm gonna be sending out that survey. That survey is normally I'm pushing people through our listserv where I'm getting them involved. We have working group calls. The working group discussions right now are literally weekly discussions. They happen throughout the week. Our current committees and focus areas are one on digital literacy, one on devices and connectivity, one on advocacy and ecosystem, and another one on what we're calling shared resources. Think of those as like special projects that don't neatly fit in those other buckets. But underneath that is us establishing a data trust to make sure that we are the most data-driven ecosystem on the planet. 2, that we are looking at community ambassadors. 3, neighborhood technology hubs, and 4, community storytelling. And so those shared resources are things that if you are doing this work already, we are trying to create the containers for which this work can intersect. And so that way it doesn't become siloed. And so if someone's interested and already doing this work, they look across the board. I'll just pick on health because you'd mentioned health. If I'm looking at devices and connectivity and digital literacy as well, those factors would be the same factors I would say how tech employable is Detroit, the same thing as how healthcare ready, telehealth ready is Detroit. Do Detroiters have, one, what devices they have form factored, because it needs to have a webcam in order to interface, obviously. But 2, what's the connection speed? If you're doing it, in a pretty crappy cellular connection, that's probably not going to work. But if you have high-speed internet, that's what you need for successful telehealth. And so as we look at those committees, they're working groups right now. They're going to transform into committees. But as we look at those working groups, anyone who's interested in that, again, I will send out that survey. You're able to indicate what area of interest. And that's where this work is starting to mesh with other people who are doing this work too. So it's really meant to be getting people in that community advisory council, getting people in those working groups that are going to turn into committees. And then as recommendations get proposed, the larger community advisory council is able to weigh in on that. And then at the same time, coincidentally, become much more informed of the partners and actors doing the work.
Okay, awesome. Here's one that's near and dear to my heart, coming from education. The question is, given the history of Detroit residents with default on utility bills, how do you expect users of digital technology to sustain payments for it over time?
Man. I love this question. So whoever asked this question, thank you. This actually goes at the sustainability piece of everything. This is also a sub point to when people say, oh, we can bridge the digital divide by making internet a utility. I'm like, okay. I see what you're saying. I see that that's the new thing, and I'm not totally against that. I think that we do ourselves a disservice and have a little bit of short-term memory loss when we look at Detroit water shutoffs And if people aren't paying that bill, what makes you think they're going to pay their internet bills? And so for us, it's like, okay, well, what can we do in the interim? I've likened this to the approach where in our community, and even growing up, like, all of us, we were dribbling. Well, a lot of us young men, at least, we're dribbling basketballs down the street. And when I look around, I live in the Russell Woods community. I have a park over here. I got another park over here, and people are playing basketball all the time. And I started asking the question: is technology really reflected within our communities? Like, really, is it reflected? Because I think that there's a missing values approach as it relates to technology. That it's like, in many cases, is an afterthought. It's not reflected anywhere, really. And so, as I look at this, I'm like, okay, there are certain problems right now that I know that we need bigger guns to be able to solve. This is a problem that's being lifted up. If people just straight up can't afford that and cannot pay for that, those are things where I'm like, look, we need to be developing more innovative solutions, more community-driven solutions. I know what we can do right now. We need to be formalizing this and getting this structure in place. But at the same time, we also need to be cognizant of certain areas and issues that are going to persist beyond what we can do that might be slightly out of our scope of control. Doesn't mean that we can't do anything. I think it's much more us saying, okay, where specifically? So this is the value of us getting this data trust stood up. One of when we began talking about this data trust, if you look at the data for internet access in Detroit, and broadly speaking, in every metropolitan area, we all look at the same data set, the American Community Survey. The problem with that data set is it's really collected at the census tract level, and it doesn't really give us a level of granularity that we need. Sometimes we look at, oh man, this is a $30 million, $40 million issue. When it's like, whoa, yeah, if you're looking at it through a buckshot capacity, but if we're looking at this in a strategic, tailored way and saying that, hey, these are the specific areas where people are not having it. And these specific areas, we need to come up with better models. And I think that's where we're able to then get a little bit more creative. As it stands right now, we just look at, well, we have internet providers and, sign up for this program or sign up for that program. And then when you're out, you can't afford them anymore. Well, then what? And I think the onus rests on us now to say, okay, we've collected our data, we know where it is. On these specific pockets and zones, we need to come up with a different approach and more innovative solutions that can then address that issue. We're not there yet, but we'll be able to think like that by the end of the year in much more detail. So I would tell whoever asked that question, you're asking the right question. I appreciate that. And that's the level of insight that I would love on that Community Advisory Council.
If I can just add one point, as Joshua mentioned, we are working really closely together on this. So one of the solutions that we have in place to help with utility assistance is the Michigan Energy Assistance Program, known as MEAP. This is largely funded by DTE, Consumers Energy. We partner with a number of our local nonprofits to help make sure that we're at least meeting our residents halfway. Last year, we were able to help over 15,000 residents maintain their utility assistance or their utility bills. And so as I think about this and how United Way can play a role beyond being the fiduciary, is how do we set up these type of assistance programs for internet access? Because again, we think of it as a nice to have. We have not thought about this as a must have in our homes. And typically, I mean, we can all speak from experience. When you have to pay your bills, usually it's like, okay, cable, I can just hang on for another month. I can hold on another month for the Wi-Fi. We want to get to the place where this can be just as much of a priority as any other utility. And so as we're thinking about how we scale this, how we promote long-term sustainability, we're also thinking about some of these bridge programs that we currently have in place for other utilities that we can also replicate to use for internet access. So the question is very important. We hope everyone who's listening today is going to be with us at our next community conversation. We urge you to sign up because there's so much work that has to happen. And we're very passionate about this, and we're not playing when we say 2024. And if you ask the both of us, we want this to happen yesterday. So we're really eager to get to the heart of these issues and find solutions. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr. Hudson. The next question: how will Connect 313 potentially help small businesses in Detroit?
Heck yeah, you guys are on it this morning. My goodness, my type of crowd. So this is something that I actually have a small business digital inclusion conversation this Friday on this very topic, because I began saying, and this actually goes back to like literally the first question of what differentiates Connect 313 from other digital inclusion initiatives. In that, if we are taking this full ecosystem approach, we have to realize that that's for our businesses too. So namely, our small businesses. one, helping them get online. I always tell the anecdotal story about when I moved to Detroit. I was hungry for apple pie. I don't know why I haven't craved it since, but I was just really hungry that day for it. And I got some of the nastiest apple pie because I typed in best apple pie in Detroit. And it was indeed not the best apple pie in Detroit. It was absolutely horrible. But that person or that entity organization just knew how to do search engine optimization better than everybody else. So it creates this false positive. And so that's where I was like, okay, no more of that. And so this is something where I think we're still taking a bit more of a measured approach to flesh it out more. But if you look at the Connect Through and Through structure and the aforementioned committees that I had named, digital literacy and digital skills isn't just for residents like alone. That's for organizations too. A lot of organizations need to increase their acumen, especially in this obviously digital era that we were roughly ushered into. And so this is something where, again, I think that's more of a measured approach, but I am going to continue to say that that is work that can be driven through our committees. And for people who are already thinking like that, getting them plugged into there, so that way as recommendations get developed, we're keeping that in mind. I'm keeping that in mind, but I need other people who are also in this fold to continue to lift that up. Otherwise, what's going to end up happening is we're going to reach a now what crux. And the now what crux looks like, oh, we did this all for the residents. Cool. Now what? Oh, now we can do for small business. It was like, no, as we're putting this together, those should be the basic tenets that we are saying, look, we're valuing small businesses, we're valuing our community and our ecosystem, and we mean that. And so I naturally had to start residents because that's just where things start oftentimes in these conversations, but I'm not ending there. That is where, yes, we're focusing on small businesses, and I need more people who are familiar with that landscape to begin driving the conversations through this Connect Through and Through structure.
Great. Thank you again, Joshua. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions today. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Hudson now.
Thank you so much, Joshua. For those of you listening, I'm sure you figured out we could talk about this all day long. So we hope that you will continue to follow us. There's quite a bit that's happening with Connect 313. As Joshua mentioned, there are conversations happening every day around this critical issue. So please stay tuned. There'll be more information and more ways that you all can get involved. If you're listening to this and you need help, please know that our 211 call center is still open, available 24/7. All you have to do is dial 211, or you can visit unitedwaysem.org/211. Just one call will connect you to over 1,300 different nonprofits and social service agencies around 6 counties in our region. So wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that. And also, we hope that you'll come back and join us next week. We'll be focusing again on child care services and promoting our Connect for Care Kids platform. It's a new resource for all of our families in Detroit who are seeking child care. It's Wednesday, August 26th at 10 a.m. and we'll be featuring our very own Jeffrey Miles, who's our Senior Director for the Center for Early Childhood Excellence, as well as Delonda McCullum, who is our VCHAP/Connect for Care specialist, who you all will get to know very well as you're learning how to use our system. If you're looking for any town hall alerts or would like to see any previous town halls, please go to www.unitedwaysem.org/virtual-town-halls. That's it for us. We hope you enjoyed this town hall. And lastly, we just want to continue to urge you, please visit our website, standwithunitedway.org. Contact Congress, just tell them that we still need support for our families in the COVID-19 relief bill. And also, it is not too late. We have until September 30th to get our census completed. As Joshua was mentioning, that data is used for so many factors for daily life in our community. And we need all of that funding, as much funding as possible as it relates to our census. So if you haven't filled it out, it is not too late. Please take the 9 minutes, the 10 minutes to fill out those 9 questions and get that census completed. So with that, we'll stop there and look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.